In the last video, we looked at a model called transactional analysis. And in this video, I want to introduce yet another one, SCARF by David Rock. Now, David Rock wrote a fantastic book called Your Brain at Work about how you can set yourself and your teams up for greater success by making sure that you're creating that environment that allows your brain to thrive. But before we dive in to this model called SCARF, why are all of these so important? Your brain, again, back to the brain, your brain responds to any threat or perceived threat in the same way. So whether it is a tiger jumping out of a bush at you, or whether it is ambiguity led by bad messaging from a senior leader or anxiety about a presentation they need to give tomorrow, your team's brains will respond to that threat in the same way and with the same fight, flight, or freeze response. Now, that means that actually, as a leader, one of our critical roles in making and creating a safe and trust-based environment is looking at how we can remove fear, a perceived threat or a real threat, from any situation as much as we can. Now, it's not possible to remove fear completely from an organization because actually everybody has their own levels of what is a perceived threat and what is not. But doing this as much as you can set your team up for great success and allow you to thrive. So, understanding different models that help you remove fear from interactions and from your teams gives you the chance to find the one that resonates with you best and that you can use in different situations. So I tend to use most of these, but I look at the situation first and I look at what's going to be the most impactful for each one. So SCARF: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. SCARF is a model that helps us think through situations and allows us to make changes as needed to create an environment that is as safe to the brain as possible. And this is what it's all about, making this piece of gooey jelly feel safe, because when we feel safe, we can create, we can innovate, and we can do all of those wonderful things that we want our teams to do. So what do we mean by status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness? So status. One of the things we want to do when we are leading is make sure that everyone's contribution or status in the room is acknowledged and understood. People will see it as a perceived threat if they feel as though they are being belittled or ignored. So making sure that we are understanding everyone's status, what is important to them around their status, and acknowledging that and valuing that is critically important. Certainty. This is the flip side of ambiguity. You've heard me talk about ambiguity a lot. Ambiguity leads to fear. So starting to think about how we drive certainty into our communication, into our behaviours, into the interactions we have with people, allows us to make sure that ambiguity isn't taking root and therefore fear isn't spreading. Autonomy. How do you set your people up to feel as though they have control over what they do, how they do it, and when they do it, as long as they're achieving the outcomes that you need them to? Autonomy is a critical aspect to intrinsic motivation, so how people are motivated themselves. Giving your teams as much autonomy as you possibly can allows them to feel as though they've got that control and actually allows them to create their own sense of safety and motivation. So autonomy, incredibly important when we start to think about how we build our ways of working. Now, when it comes to autonomy, there is how you are and how you empower your teams, but there's also your processes and systems. So really start to look at any of those processes and systems that actually remove autonomy. Finding those, removing those, can make such a huge impact to your team and their sense of well-being. So autonomy, yes, how You will let people work, how they work at their best, but also how they're engaging with the processes and systems that they need to use to get their roles done. Relatedness. How does everyone connect? Does everyone feel as though they're part of the team, part of the company? Do they feel as though they belong? That relatedness between individuals and third parties is incredibly important. If you don't feel as though you belong, you're never going to feel fully safe in that environment. So understanding the relatedness between the teams, understanding how everyone comes together is important to making sure that people feel safe. Last but by no means least is fairness. Nothing causes resentment more than favoritism. So treating everybody fairly is a critical aspect to SCARF and therefore safety in the workplace. Being fair does not always mean treating everybody identically, but it does mean that there are no advantages or opportunities for favoritism. Being open is also really important when it comes to fairness. So being open about people's skills and capabilities, behaviours and mindsets, and where they may best fit into certain opportunities to delegate. Make sure that you're not delegating through favoritism, but actually you're giving tasks to the right people at the right time. So SCARF: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness and fairness. This is another great model for you to improve how you're engaging with your teams and how you drive and create that environment of safety.